Okay guys, so in this video, we're going to be talking about the triggers for animations with the drift stack. Now, it doesn't matter which drift stack you're looking at, whether or not it's drift, drift scrambles, split text, or type, they all have the same type of animation triggers. Now, Drift Timeline, aka Drift Pro, has completely more elaborate different trigger settings. We're going to have a completely separate video for that. So make sure you look for that if you want a video for Drift Pro triggers. So in this video, we're going to be targeting the Drift Animate stack. And in this demo, I already have hover turned on. So let's go ahead and look at that interaction. So you'll notice when I hover over this particular demo, it animates. And when I hover out, it goes in reverse. The reverse action is obviously configurable with this checkbox. So if we uncheck this, we'll notice when I hover over, the animation happens. But this time when I unhover, the animation doesn't go in reverse because I have that turned off. Now, the second checkbox in this setting is called tap and hold on touch. And that has to do with touch devices where it's the type of hover event or pointer event that happens with those devices. So by default, if you have this checkbox enabled, you have to actually tap and hold. And while you're holding, the animation will happen. And when you let go at any point, it will trigger the hover out effect, right? So when this checkbox is turned off, it's basically simply a tap. So the tap will trigger the animation versus the actual holding down of the finger. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at the scroll-based triggers. This is actually the default trigger. And you'll notice that when I have this enabled, it actually animated by default because this green box is already in the viewport. So that's one important note is with scroll-based animations, if the element is on the page on page load, it being on the page will trigger the animation. So one important tool when configuring scroll-based animations is the scroll markers or the locations of when the animations are going to stop and start. And that's this checkbox, this show scroll markers. And here we have the settings set to the start is at 10% from the bottom, and the end of the animation is 10% from the top. So if I go ahead and let's scroll this content all the way down to the bottom. Okay. Now you'll notice if I were to scroll up, now once this start indicator, this is the starting position of the Drift Animate stack. Once that start hits this, the animation is going to start. And there we go. So that triggers the starting point of the animation when it reaches the scroller start position. Now, if we notice, we go now, once the end position, once the bottom of our Drift Animate stack reaches the end position, it's going to animate in reverse. That way you can kind of scroll out of the page. And conversely, if we scroll down, when the end reaches the end, the animation is going to be triggered again. And as we scroll down the page, when the start position reaches the scroller start position, it's going to animate in reverse. Now, if you only want to trigger this animation one time, go ahead and set the only trigger once option. Now, the last setting here in the scroll triggers is this scrub timeline on scroll. Let's go ahead and turn that on. Now, what this does is, so far, all of our animations were timed. So we had set this particular animation to run 300 pixels to the right, as well as rotate over 2 seconds. However, when we turn on the scrubbing of the timeline, what happens is the animation is tied to the scrolling of the website. So once the start position hits the scroller start, the animation is going to start. And it's going to continue until the end position reaches the scroller end. And if we go in reverse, I have trigger only once turned on. Let's go ahead and if we go in reverse, we'll see that it goes backwards. So I can scroll up and down, and that animation is tracking my scrolling. Now, what is inertia? Inertia allows the animation to continue for a certain amount of time after my scrolling has stopped. So if I go ahead and set this to a larger value just so we can kind of see, I'm going to set this to almost 3 seconds here. So if I scroll, we'll see that the animation continues even though my scrolling has stopped. This allows us to add some life into some movement into our web pages. It's really exciting. I think this inertia feature can really add some really great parallaxy effects to our websites.